from the video that I was going to put up on the Shamega J channel when I was talking. So I'm trying to figure out what they're up to. You know, like I tell you, when I have a feeling that they're up to something, I try to tell you guys that. Today I really do have that feeling. They started doing some work upstairs again. You know, the last video I did when they started to bang, it seemed like they were doing some work upstairs, then it stopped. That something did happen. Now today they're doing the same thing. They've been upset about a lot of things. They didn't want me to, they said they don't want me to make money off this. What I'm wondering is this: if everything I do to make money they sabotage, and now I was doing this way before them and they started to sabotage it and they don't want me to make money off this, then what would they want me to make money off? You get what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things where everything, if I do everything and they sabotage it, then they don't want me to do anything. So the other part of that is that when they're sabotaging things and they're putting in so much work, like this channel has a ton of videos, not a lot of views. The other channel started getting views, and all of a sudden they sabotaged that. And then I couldn't get any subscribers. Now I'm suddenly getting a few subscribers, but not enough to get to the 50 subscribers. I need to do a live on the Shamega J channel. It just seems so weird. Like, even in terms of, they said, you know, they wanted me to really over promote myself on the one hand. And then on the other hand, they said, I seem like I'm doing so much to promote myself. So again, it's like they're confusing everything. They're telling me one thing, then they're changing it. It just seems like they worked so hard to sabotage me that it's obvious. You know, they're doing something they said they're pointing something at my head. So today they said they thought I would be in tears because what they were pointing at my head hurts. They admit that they're doing it, and they admit that it causes pain and it causes seizures. And this is part of what I'm saying. Like, if I don't record and do these videos, I couldn't keep track of all the things they're saying. Sometimes they say something that makes sense with what they've said in the past. Sometimes it's like it contradicts what they said in the past. So they said, try not, here they are. This is how they speak. Try not to repeat everything we're saying. Try not to say what we just said. Whereas they've used surveillance over these years to say what I would normally say. So what they're asking, in fact, is for me not to say what I normally would say, come up with something completely different. They said when I was at Lacoste, the guy said something to me about a polo. And I said, oh, it's really nice. That's a nice color. He said, is that the only word you can use? And I said, yeah, because it's nice. And so they took that to be like me being rude. It isn't. And this is part. They said reconnect. They don't know what I'm talking about when I'm saying that I come from a sales environment, customer service environment. I've gotten requests by many people, not just Lacoste, to work with them, to coach people. This is how we speak in a normal environment. We don't speak like, oh, you know, using all this type of language that normally people would say that's a salesperson. We speak like, oh, that's a really nice shirt. That color looks good on you. That's nice for you, whatever. So if people don't like that, then they don't really want me. And this is part of this. I'm not going to change for them. They're not going to control who I am as a person. And that was part of what they wanted. They wanted, without confronting me directly, they wanted to create a confrontation. And that's why they did it with the voices. So the other night, someone said, you can't, talking to the other person doing this, they said, you can't use the system to make her look mentally ill and then make it real. So meaning they have two contradictory systems going on. One system is it's all in her head. She's not hearing voices. She's schizophrenic. You can't then say that same person had a confrontation with you because then it would be real. So they're now trying to figure out how to make this work because it's like two competing systems they created. One is I'm a crazy person. What do you normally do to a crazy person? You don't get involved with them. You don't argue with a crazy person. The next system is you did all these things wrong in reality, but we can't start the fight. You have to start the fight. So how do we do it? We keep provoking you in order for you to start the fight. Well, that wouldn't make sense if I'm a crazy person, meaning it's such craziness that they've created for themselves, that they're in a position today where I feel they're more, someone just said more dangerous, not only more dangerous, but they back themselves into such a corner that they have to do something big. And that's part of this. Part of this is that even now there was a woman, she just said, see, when you said, what other word could you use, that angered her. But I'm talking to the voices in my head. So why is a real person angry? Do you get what I'm saying? So once they box themselves into that corner and trap themselves, how do they get out of that box? Well, they keep trying to provoke me to do something, and I'm not going to. Remember, these are the voices in my head. So I'm a crazy person. Or then they're like, oh, no. Then we'll really bang and we'll show the world that we're real. We'll tell everyone we're real so that you're not a crazy person. We're really doing this to you. Then they're committing a crime. So then what do? That's my point. I'm dealing with people who are too mentally ill and too much of criminals to realize they have nowhere to go with this. So the journey for me is just showing you the journey. The journey is, this is what's happening. What do they do now? I'm not a mentally ill person. I've recorded it. They've talked about it to other people. They've clearly dealt with other people with this, and they force people to move out of this building this way. And what do they do now? They either they admit, I'm not a mentally ill person. I didn't do the wrong thing. You've seen the reviews from the cast. They enjoyed what I did. They had no problem with me. So I'm not mentally ill, and I'm still not. Or they admit they're criminals and they just want to move out of this building and become a homeless person, which a lot of people who've left comments say happens. And then they're the bad guys. So this had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my personality. It just had to do with the crime. Or they just keep doing this that they've been doing for years and years and years. And that's the very definition of insanity or crazy. We used to say the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, which is what they've been doing. Someone just said, get Shamega out of this, meaning don't involve me with this. And this is partly the issue. The issue is the thought process behind this is that they're going to provoke me to do something that would seem like I just went nuts without realizing that over the years, this would drive me nuts. So it's not just provoking me and it came out of nowhere. This would be years and years and years of banging and talking and keeping me up at night and leaving comments and contacting people claiming to be me. It wouldn't be me just being provoked because of out of nowhere. It would be a process that led to me acting out. They said something, this isn't rope-a-dope. That's what boxing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe there's a scam part of rope-a-dope also. They said, this isn't a little sis account. They said, doesn't that have significance to you? No. So they said, we're really going to do this way. They said they scrambled up some of the Shamega references. They said, didn't you use my sister as a reference on your resume? No, they've already told you that 1,001 times. They said, so I'm the family idiot. That's part of this. You know, I feel like they wanted to sabotage a bigger sister by doing this to her friend. And by doing that way, she had to then say, no, this is wrong, that's wrong. I feel, here's my opinion about that. I think that the older sister has always been exploited and manipulated. And I think had she been left to deal with her life the way she should have or would have, this wouldn't have happened like this. They convinced her that she was always like, no, I think it's a lot of other people trying to jump on what she had and just ruin it for her. Someone said this is exactly what I said. Someone said this isn't the way somebody who they say this person's name a lot intended would be. They said, didn't I contradict myself? No, I haven't. They said these are our interrogation techniques where they kind of ask a question. Here's the point. This goes back to what I'm saying about this program they've created. It's a program for crazy people. This would work if you're mentally ill. It doesn't work on sane people, because sane people they said I'm one of the few people who documented everything they've said over the years, so I can refer back to it. Exactly. A sane person would just refer back to what happened instead of arguing. So the point is they're saying that this is an interrogation system where they ask you questions, you answer, and then they you. Well, this has been a system they said they used since I was a child, but they've definitely used this system since I started recording this. And they even admit it. I'm not contradicting myself. I'm not saying things that are in disagreement with what I've said. And partly what's going on is people who I didn't have a relationship with, they admit today, I don't know them. Finally, I've been saying this because if I knew them, they wouldn't talk to me through the walls. Who says, you know what, I really feel like talking to someone. Let me just go through her building walls. No one. They call you, they come by, they do something where they know you. This was to try to trick me into getting involved with them. And when it didn't work, they just kept going and going and go. It's been years of this, all day, every day. So they said they know for sure now that this isn't the FBI doing it, and it's not the American CIA doing it, because it wouldn't have been done this way. Like I said this years ago in a video, this would make the U.S. look really bad. Really, would really be an embarrassment for us. And partly, I feel it's an embarrassment anyway. But when it would be done by someone who is in the U.S. as a U.S. intelligence officer, this would be an embarrassment. They got so much wrong. They've created nothing but illness, sadness, grief, people crying, people upset, humiliating people. Why would the U.S. do that? They wouldn't. And partly what's so sad about this situation, they said they destroyed many families. That's what I'm seeing. This was supposed to be like they used references to things and like, does that make sense to you? The U.S. wouldn't do it that way. But the other part about this is that just by showing how they manipulated people who you could tell they're taken advantage of, it's disgusting. There's nothing about this that anyone would say, yeah, that's exactly how I intended this to be. No, it's like, how the fuck did this happen? Who the fuck is running this show? And the other part of that is when they said, oh, they didn't want me to get nasty. They said I'm supposed to be like a Southern Black woman who's like really polite. I'm a West Indian Bronx native, okay? I don't sell that brand. And that's part of this. Like, if you look, I've shown you guys pictures of me over the years. That was never the look I've ever had of a Southern Black woman. I look like a West Indian woman from the Bronx who you would expect to be this way. And by trying to change my identity and putting me in the book and if I wasn't this person, you would say, where the hell did she come from? Like, where were you raised? I was raised in the Bronx. And this is part of what I'm saying. In trying to change me into their type of person that they wanted, they would be completely changing my race, which they've tried, changing my upbringing. They said they were surprised I wasn't ashamed of my upbringing. I never left. Who gets ashamed of being where you've been for 52 years? And that's part of it. That's partly why they said they wanted to move me into a southern state, I guess, where they could manipulate me into being like a completely different person. But how would I be ashamed of being where I've lived for 52 years? I would if I had been trying to pretend to be a southern Black woman, because they would say, where are you coming off with that? And that's part of this. The part of this is that if you work with someone and they hire you because of what you are and how you present yourself, and then you change, that would be an issue. So when I left Lacoste, I got a great commendation letter from them. So it wasn't like there was an issue. They enjoyed what I did. They liked my work. Even the examples that I'm giving you, there wasn't an issue. It became an issue when these people entered my life and wanted to make me a problem that could be solved by interacting with me, by being my quote unquote friend. Then there's an issue. That's a scam. If in order to solve a problem with me, you have to create these interactions with me where I can then all of a sudden become your friend and you could live with me, that's a scam. And the bigger issue with the scam is, as a native New Yorker who would have had many opportunities to be with them and chose not to, that's an even bigger scam. Why would we suddenly get together? Oh, because you have this criminal network that needs people. And that's what this seems to be. They said they didn't want me savvy that way. How could I not be savvy that way? It doesn't, you can't say you're not savvy that way if you're picking somebody and you're targeting someone who grew up in the Bronx. That was part of, they said they wanted me, they used the word highly delusional. I just want to go back to one thing before we go into what they're talking about. They just used the word highly delusional, which I think that's what they wanted. They also wanted somebody, they said these tactics work on certain groups. And at one point in a video, I talked about the groups they mentioned. They said Jewish people and Catholics. I was going to say women, but they did in a different video talk about how it works on women. Well, I think it works on people who are very religious and trusting of the voice of God technology. So not just trusting in general, but trusting that there's some sort of, system out there where if you're very good and you do the right thing, good things will happen to you. Well, in reality, that's not always the case. In reality, it's not always that the good, trusted person will win. Sometimes that good, trusting person will be taken advantage of. And when you target people by this system, one of the things they said was that they always wanted me to give. The expectation for me as Shamega, the real person, would be, if I give, I want a reciprocal relationship where I can eventually get something back in return. Their expectation on me would be that I would never expect to get anything back in return. So it would just be me giving, and never getting. And that's part of what I'm saying. When they talk about wanting someone highly delusional, I think the expectation was that I would think, boy, I'm giving, I'm doing such and such, and I'm just happy doing that. That would be someone, in my point of view, my personality assessment, who would be highly delusional. I believe in reciprocal relationships where if you're giving and you're doing, you get something in return. Now, going back to, someone just said like a sales job or like a job, period. If you work for a living, you're not doing it just to give, you're doing it to get a paycheck. And that's what I'm saying. There's something in the thinking of the people who organize this program that they are highly delusional, to quote the person, where they thought this was going to be a plan for them just to take, invade my privacy, scam people, use me. And I think that was the point. They wanted to use me to scam people. And when I wouldn't do it, then I had to be discredited. And part of how they were going to discredit me, to have me arguing with the walls. Suddenly, I'm going to be the crazy person who is hearing voices or confronting people. And the people say, "What are you talking about? I don't hear anything." And that was part of the scam. Once the scam was announced, because it wasn't going right, I don't know why it wasn't going right, but how they were setting this up was they even admitted they called people, and I got comments from people who were like, "This is definitely happening," or they could hear the voices. It was a really great comment. I can't put it up on this since it's alive, but someone said they hear the voices and it sounds like someone was planning to rob someone. And what ended up happening, of course, there were these robberies and break-ins. So people can clearly hear this. So what do they do then after this failed? Then I become the woman who would go around trying to call people and find out information which would only involve them deeper into this. And that's part of what the issue is with me. This is a law enforcement job. This isn't a job for just a regular person. You know, I'm laughing because they just said, "Oh, I must have thought I was speaking for so long." That's another part of how this works. There's somebody who's running this program who keeps telling, it seems like the little sister, "Stop pretending that she's me." Instead of like something can happen and she'll chime in as though she's me. And they told the little sister, "Stop doing that, because you're actually seeming mentally ill when you do that." Meaning, if somebody is like, "Mary, did such and such happen?" and I'm not Mary, I'm Shamega, and I'm like, "Well, that didn't happen. Why would I do that?" That's part of this. Is part of this program was to make people seem more mentally ill than they are, to make people think that they're talking to me when they aren't, which goes back to when they want to change my personality to fit this group. It would enable them to impersonate me. And I'm saying, no, when you speak to me, you'll definitely know it's me because of the accent, because of the way I speak, the way I phrase things. It's not that other person. So I'm going to let you listen to them. And when they say something, I'll let you know. They said, "You have a way of insulting everybody." I'm just going to end this because something's happening and then I'll be back.